right, welcome back, everybody. Good to have you with us watching Morning Live here on SABC 2 and Channel 404. Well, South Africa's labour movement will join millions around the world to celebrate what is International Workers' Day. The country's biggest labour union, the Congress of South African Trade Unions, that of course being Cosatu, has since 1985 represented millions of workers. Now this year, the organisation is celebrating 30 years under the theme Repositioning Cosatu towards radical economic transformation. Well, in studio with us, we are joined by Norman Mampane, who is Cosatu's acting spokesperson, to talk about what Workers' Day means for South Africa's labour industry. Good to have you. Welcome to the studio.
Good morning to the viewership of Morning Live. We know you should be celebrating on the street, but because you've got the responsibility to communicate and enhance conversation, that is why we're having a conversation.
Indeed. Well, it's not only me. I mean, there are so many workers around South Africa that are reporting for duty today. Shops are open, they're trading, businesses go. Sometimes you wouldn't even think it's a public holiday. I mean, you know, it's Workers' Day. You'd think that most things come to a standstill, but that's not the case around the country, is it?
Well, Leanne, we are celebrating the 129th anniversary of International Workers' Day. Cosatu in South Africa is celebrating its 21st anniversary since May Day was regarded as a paid public holiday after the 1994 dispensation. Yeah. You will notice that before the 1994 dispensation, workers by themselves forced the celebration of Workers' Day because the apartheid regime didn't allow workers to celebrate this day. Yeah. You will remember in 1986, under the then leader P.W. Botha, workers said, we'll go to the street with or without a Botha. And the history of trade unionism has evolved in South Africa with other characteristics like the migrant system. Many workers across the continent coming to South Africa to sell their labor power, the recognition of African trade unions, because by then the majority of unions that were recognized were white foreign trade unions that were recognized, and the evolution of labor laws in which job reservation was eradicated, labor standards were promoted, the right to strike, the right to assemble, the right to organize, and the right to collective bargaining.
Yeah. So, I mean, what I'm gathering from you is that we've come a long way in these years. When we look back at the 30 years as the country's biggest union as Cosatu, do you feel that workers' rights are victorious, or there's still a lot to fight for?
In South Africa, Leanne, when we compare with other countries who are still facing union bashing, still facing not being granted the right to organize, like in Swaziland, workers still are unsure as to whether they should celebrate this day because the regime there is continuing undermining such kind of international labor standards. In South Africa, as we compare to other countries, we believe that we've made serious gains. However, there are still challenges about labor brokers, underemployment of migrant workers, many of our workers still not enjoying the minimum wages that we should be enjoying. Many workers still have to travel from townships into towns every day. Many of our workers still surviving on 10 rents. We still believe that we can move step ahead and ensure that we attain economic liberation.
Which is, I think, at the center of all of this. I mean, economic liberation improves lives, improves the ability to get an education, to better yourselves, and that's the reality. Just looking back. In terms of the history of this day, it was also known as May Day, even though we call it Workers' Day now. But May Day, the significance of this?
Well, May Day, you will realize that in South Africa, the workers demanded to celebrate May Day, but the then regime declared that the first Friday in May will be declared. Now, workers said, no ways, we'll celebrate the 2 days. The Friday declared by the apartheid regime and the real International Workers' Day. So it's about the usage of the word May, and but more importantly, because it started in Chicago, 1886, in which by the 4th of May, workers went to the streets. Unfortunately, they were killed by American police, and thus in South Africa and across the globe, we commemorating this day to mark an achievement of fighting for 8 working hours by then. And now we're speaking about 40 hours and other labor standards that we always bargain for.
Yeah. We're running out of time because it's an interesting conversation to have when you look how far, I suppose, the labour market and how things have changed in South Africa and through these years. But obviously there's celebrations taking place for Workers' Day here in South Africa, around the country, through Cosatu. What's happening?
Yes, we've got about 17 rallies spread across all the length and breadth of South Africa. The main rally is in Durban at the Curious Fountain Stadium, in which the president of Cosatu, the president of the African National Congress, the general secretary of SABC, the president of SANCO will be addressing the nation. But more importantly, CEC members are spread all over the country, in which alliance partners will be given a platform to speak. And with a collaboration with artists in which they will launch the Africa Month, adding our voice in the no-xenophobic attacks that we have recently seen. As Cosatu, we will use the platform to condemn the xenophobic attacks. We will use the platform to say one industry, one union, one federation, one country, and continue to call for the banning of labor brokers.
Yeah. Now, just finally, having a look back to the year 2002 at that devastating bus accident. Is that going to be remembered as well? Is it remembered every year?
In all the venues, there will be a moment of silence in which we will remember workers who passed on at all workplaces, including the Soulsport and workers who were killed before Marikana, workers who were killed during Marikana, and workers who across the continent in the Mediterranean Sea, workers continue to be drowning in the Mediterranean Sea. We'll be having a moment of silence in order to remember them. But more importantly, to say the spear must be taken forward. Class struggle will never end so long as capitalism still exists. All
right, let's leave it there for today. This day celebrating workers around the world, but specifically here in South Africa. We've come a long way, but as you've heard, we've still got a long battle to fight when it comes to the economic equality of workers here in South Africa. Thanks for joining us, Norman Mampane, who is the acting spokesperson of Cosatu. It's been a pleasure having you.
We wish you a better day, fighting for better wages and better working conditions.
Good. I hope my boss is listening.
Ciao, ciao.
Let's fight for better wages. Thank you so much. Thanks very, very much, Norman. All right, let's take a break. We'll see you after this.